way into his dirty hands, and now they must find a way to retrieve it, and told Yes Man that if he doesn't carry out that task properly, he'll be demoted to an assistant teacher. Then, in that case, he suggested the principal counteract that sabotage and said that they could damage the pelt so he wouldn't be able to use it. Once their sponsors came across the tattered remains of the pelt they had so graciously donated, he, who doesn't know the value of such a gift, will be notorious for the scandal. The principal considered it a brilliant plot, and that time they'll finally witness his defeated expression. Leopold went to the leatherworking classroom and noticed that the class was mostly male. Well, for then, he decided to focus on finding an empty seat. Yes Man called him and showed his seat by pointing on the floor. Leopold asked him why he had to sit on the floor, but Yes Man told him to stop talking back and sit down. He had no choice, so he sat on the floor. The in-charge named herself as Fluffy, who will instruct the production-type classes on leatherworking and sewing. Leopold felt that the teacher had a gentle aura. Suddenly, Yes Man said pardon the sudden announcement, but due to the lack of students, they will be having a joint session with the sewing class. The in-charge called everyone inside, and unlike that one, the class was mostly girls. Since that was a conjoined class, the in-charge decided to help them get acquainted with one another and decided to sit together in pairs. Monaka was going to pair with Leopold, but Yes Man came and screamed out on her to sit on the chair. He explained that from that seat, her beautiful embroidery will be on full display for their sponsors. She said right, but she ran towards Leopold and sat beside him and said she would rather sit there instead. Annoyed, Yes Man started speaking that she can't sit there as for a sing test like her. To be sitting on the floor like that, their sponsors won't stand for such a thing. Monaka commented that they both were students of the school though, and if Leo can sit on the floor so that she can do the same, and told him that if Leopold moves to a chair, then she will also move to a chair. Yes Man replied to her that it was impossible for him to permit such a thing. At last, then he allowed him to choose any seat he would like. Leopold thanked Monaka. The in-charge instructed everyone that day the leadersmiths will be making a leather cloak, while the seamstresses would be embroidering badges, and told him that she was able to supply the materials and tools needed. However, they will be required to hand over the finished product to the school. But just for that day, the student with the best creation will be allowed to keep theirs. As for any items crafted from self-supplied materials, they may take it home with them, regardless of quality. In that case, Leopold decided just to borrow some tools. Yes Man interrupted and told them that crafting tools were forbidden from being lent out to the special education class. In charge asked if there was a rule like that, but he replied that he just added it now. He said that, however, he will make an exception for Leopold and grant him one of my own tools, and he granted the enchanted iron needle and scissors that he'll be using for his project. Other than that, he was not to use even a single spool of thread from that classroom. But in charge interrupted and asked if it was like that. He won't be able to make anything. Now he went to Leopold and told him that even if his pelt was torn and rendered useless, they can replace it with a better one and with a bonus too. Leopold stated that he knew what it was after all, but Yes Man denied and said he had no idea what he was talking about. Ordinarily, needles and scissors wouldn't be able to cut a wyvern's pelt. Otherwise, he wouldn't have decided to let him borrow much more powerful magic tools. Monaka said most importantly, him conveniently having those magic tools on hand solidified the fact that all along he had known about my wyvern's pelt and its properties. Yes Man screamed out of his frustration and said, in that case, do as he wants, as there was no way a foul student like him could earn anybody's favor, and he gave him to use it however he wants, and you will see how he cuts everything to shreds. Leopold used his occupation and gladly accepted those tools. Yes Man told him that even if he acts confident, it's useless if he can't use them. Leopold replied to him that there was nothing one can do with the pelt if they don't have any thread. Yes Man said to not comprehend that as expected of a student in the special education class, and at that rate, he'll be a laughing stock. Monaka stood to shut everyone down, but Leopold said it's fine, just watch me, and he went to the window and jumped outside. Yes Man questioned him if he was thinking of escaping after talking so big. Then he got a snake-like vine with exceptional durability and flexibility. He tore it open and pulled out the inner. Everyone was in shock as to what he was doing, and he seemed to be cleaning the vine he picked up in the pond. Then he dried it over the fire. Yes Man was laughing at him, saying now he did a bonfire, which had nothing to do with leatherworking. The in-charge also couldn't trace what Leopold's plans were, but Monaka was sure that Leopold would definitely make something amazing and was cheering him. Leopold felt that it was dry enough then. Then he put it all together. Everyone understands that it was thread he made. He made high-quality thread from the fibers of the Dejadzil vine. It was durable and resistant to wear and tear. Yes Man, with other students, was stunned that he made the threads. Amazed, Monaka was filled with happiness. The in-charge said that to think there was a student who knew how to make a thread from scratch was incredible. Yes Man stated that it will just break. Leopen replied that they just have to see. He put the thread into the needle and thought to try it out. He used leatherworking skill and started doing the work super fast. A student stated it as a sewing wizard. Even the in-charge was shocked that he was adding a collar as well as pockets too, and commented that if Leopen actually experienced leatherworker. At last he was done, and the leather coat was completed. The students were stunned after seeing the leather coat. The in-charge screamed out at the glow of the coat as it was a high-quality item. It was an effect that rarely occurs in the production of typical products, an item that has become highly received a bonus, and it can also bring out the magic power hidden inside the materials. The person in charge felt that a student who could create a magic item would appear so soon. She stated that high quality was said to be something that might happen once every 10 years, even for a professional leather craftsman, and to think that it happens so easily. So she cried out of her emotions and stated that Leopen was a once-in-10 years talent. Monaka added that she also thought that he was a genius. Frustrated, Yes Man denied belief and stated that it was a big mistake. He said that the reason why the coat became high quality was that he let him borrow his needle and scissors, which were passed down in his family, the Soig's divine needle and Kilsha's sword scissors. The person in charge believed him and called them divine items, explaining that she initially thought they were school properties. He commented that they were his personal belongings and told her that he was busy, so he asked her to excuse him. The others also believed it and said that anyone who uses divine items would be able to produce such high-quality items. But Monaka said that she couldn't believe it and that the high quality came into effect because of Leopen's greatness. She also commented that she wanted to be a great craftsman like him. So if it was fine with him, Leopen agreed to teach her how to use a needle. Leopen thought that Monaka was a seamstress, so if it was just needle handling, he said to try it together with her and told her not to rush and to take her time when handling a needle. He must precisely aim it and thread it. He told her that she was doing great. Leopen told her that if she did that, it would naturally be presentable. He noticed that she must have been thinking of someone and advised that it's better to combine satin and long and short stitches there. The person in charge wrote it down, imagining that person's smiling face and put the emotion into their work, and then satin and short and long. Both Leopen and Monaka went to Philippi Sensei. Monaka showed her crest, shocked everyone, and she thanked Leopen because that was the first time she'd done it so neatly. She offered her crest to Leopen and asked him to accept it. She said to begin with Leopen. She made it so that she could give it to him. Leopen gladly accepted it, and he said that it used to be her family emblem as the pattern, if he was not mistaken. She told him that the heart shape represents the heart organ, and by giving it to him, it means that she gave him her heart. He stated that he should hurry and stitched it to the coat. After the stitching ended, he noticed that his level became 109. He thought that usually when combining craft items, it's either to maintain the current level or to lower it. To even reach level 100 means it jumped to a royal craftsman level. That shows how big of a hurdle it was for a craftsman. He wore the coat. Monaka told him that it looked great on him. He thanked Monaka and said that this was also thanks to her. She said that she should be the one who should be thanking him and asked him to guide her as well. At that moment, the person in charge arrived and said that there was no longer anything she could teach him. She asked him to please choose her class once more. By mistake, Yes Man broke the principal's statue, and at the same time, the principal came to him and told him to take a look at that matter and forget about it, because there was something more important to discuss. He explained that as expected of divine items, they have different auras. He tried to tell him the reality, but the principal continued by saying that there has been an inquiry from the Royal Museum, and they would like to display those items. To think that their school would have a teacher who owns divine items, their education rank will definitely get much higher. Yes Man told him that it wouldn't be good, but the principal stated not to tell him that he was willing to lend that to Leopen, but he won't lend that to the Royal Museum. Yes Man told him that it was just scissors and needles, but the principal said to forget it. If he does that, he'll just insult the other party, and he left. Frustrated, Yes Man started calling it all trash. It's Leopen's fault that it's come to that. Suddenly, the physical education teacher named Nick Bacca came and asked, as he seemed to be in a bad mood. Yes Man thought that the next class was PE and asked Nick about his plan for that day's class. He replied that since it was still the first day, he was planning for a run around the forest that serves as an orientation. Yes Man advised him to focus more on practice and suggested that he should have a bare-handed fistfight, which stunned Nick. There was a delinquent that needs passionate and thorough guidance. Leopen remembered that the next class was P class. Yes Man told Nick that during the class, he must beat the rotten temper out of him to a pulp. Leopen decided that since he didn't get his own tracksuit, he would wear that coat and attend the class. After arriving in class, Leopen noticed that he was the only one without gym clothes. Blushing, Monaka asked him if he had finally decided to show up and told him that the lesson would start any moment. He replied that he didn't need to change, so he was just looking around the area. Akemi mentioned that he had become quite stylish in the short time he was gone as he was wearing the overcoat. The girl approached Monaka and asked her to go as they needed to get into their class groups. All of them left to join their respective groups. He overheard some boys talking about Monaka and Akemi, saying that just seeing them made P totally worth it. He thought that gym clothes really did have a certain fresh feeling to them. Leopold leveled up and wondered if he had really leveled up just from feasting his eyes a little. His new occupation was a martial artist. He thought that jack of all trades, master of none included more than he couldn't yet see, and it could be one of those hidden skills. He had heard of them as each occupation's skills were basically the same, but there was a rare chance that when they level up, they would gain a skill with unknown effects, which they said were very powerful. Leopold never thought it would be applicable to a jobless person like him, though. He wondered how in the world he would use it. Well, he'd probably get a hint or something eventually. But for now, he changed his occupation to a martial artist since he had it. PE class was about to start, so he'd be able to move his body a lot. Nick welcomed the students and introduced himself. Everyone was fascinated by his amazing muscles. Nick told them that he had something to share before they started, saying that there were powerful AoE, area of effect, spells applied to the academy. The first was Unthirst, a spell that allowed them to survive without water. Leopold thought that he hadn't felt thirsty for a while despite all the work he had done. The students mentioned that it was part of the Academy's consideration for newcomers, and one Sook supported this by explaining how hard it was to secure drinking water in new settlements. Nick mentioned the next spell, Avoidance, which repelled beasts and monsters. A student said they hadn't seen any monsters yet. Nick informed them that the effects of these spells would gradually decrease starting tomorrow. He emphasized that from tomorrow, they wouldn't know when a monster might attack them, which was why the PE class was necessary. He made it clear that it was only practice, and he wouldn't waste time teaching them styles or anything, as monsters wouldn't wait for them to grow or level up. He explained that they would be fighting each other with nothing but their bare hands, as all occupations were able to use them. At last, they'd show them an example. Nick pointed at Leopold, and he understood that it must be the vice principal again. He thought that he really did know him. Just then, Nick called Leopold to step forward and spar with each other. Leopold stated that he got it. Some boys were saying that Leopold got targeted right away and would be beaten to a pulp. Akemi wondered that no matter what others said, she knew that Leopold was surely going to do something interesting. Monaka cheered Leopold on to do his best. Nick said that as a display of his sympathy, he would meet Leopold's punch without defense and take on any worthless punch he could muster. Leopold told him that he would take full advantage of that and would be mocked as worthless. He switched to a dexterous body and fought to convert the majority of his stats to strength there. He ran and hit Nick, and the master fainted, falling to the ground with just one shot. Leopold thought that he should have known that 2,500 strength was overdoing it. Stunned, the boys were talking about how one punch had just defeated the master, as if a punch could send someone flying like that. They called it just like an explosion. Well, it was actually Leopold thinking the same. But the others said that they should first worry about the sensei. Everyone ran towards the sensei, and Leopold thought that, as expected, Monaka, as a saintess, probably couldn't leave anyone injured alone. But Monaka ran to Leopold and asked if he was hurt anywhere. Leopold replied, "Don't you see what happened just then?" and told her that nothing happened to him. He asked her to look after the sensei and said she wasn't watching. She replied that she was watching intently and she was just so worried about him getting hurt. The girls and boys started to worry about the master. Suddenly, Nick awakened and appeared quite prideful, asking if he was a big shot. Leopold told him that he had limited the damage as much as possible by using a high-level technique called floating body. Nick told him not to realize that he had won and said that he thought it was too strange for it to be a one-hit KO, knockout. He even speculated that it might have been Monson from Group 20. The vice principal shouted if they were participating in the lesson. Then the master told him that playtime was over, it was time to get serious. Leopold asked if they were still fighting, and the master confirmed that they were. He stated that if he could get awake, it meant he hadn't shown the example yet, and now it was his turn to hurt Leopold. Leopold tried to stop him as he had to convert his stats to toughness fast, but he couldn't stop. However, it didn't hurt him, and he felt that his body had turned to stone, for instance, but the master's bones broke. Leopold contemplated what was going on because no matter how much toughness he had, his body shouldn't get harder or heavier. The boys couldn't believe their eyes. As for them, it was impossible. There was no way they could have taken that punch and still be fine. They pondered why the sensei was in pain. A boy said to hold on as it could be another high-level technique of the sensei, but Leopold told him to look at him again as it was no high technique there. He told them that they really should be tending to the sensei. Monaka, Akemi, and Shinobuko ran to him and asked if he was hurt. Monaka told him that she saw everything. Akemi stated that it was terrifying. It was no good because, as they were still learning as saints, they couldn't heal him. They decided to take him to the infirmary. Leopold thought that he would better not min-max his stats from then on. During the meeting, the Board of Pioneer Education determined that the needle and scissors donated to the Royal Museum were counterfeit based on the results of the appraisal. The yes man said that he couldn't believe there were fake educators out there doing such outrageous things. Furthermore, the PE teacher was knocked out by a student during class. After considering these incidents, they decided to revise the evaluations they had made for them. As a result, the ranks of the principal, vice principal, and PE teacher at the Royal Pioneer Academy will all be demoted by 1 level. Leopold thought he heard some screams coming from the castle and realized during that day's PE class that he shouldn't be casually min-maxing his status. He needed to reset and balance it out. He decided it was time to get some work done. According to Nick Baka-sensei, the Academy's surroundings were currently reinforced with a spell that keeps monsters and other threats at bay. However, its effects would gradually weaken starting tomorrow, which meant there was a possibility it would soon encounter monsters in the future. Living in the residential quarters with the rest of the students would allow them to take turns keeping watch, making it less likely for monsters to attack. Living alone in the forest made one an easy target. Leopold feels something different and noticed that home was leveled up to base. As Leopold leveled his home up to a base, he soon retired for the night. Meanwhile, the Year 1 class was tirelessly engaged in the search for dragonfly leather. They couldn't find it anywhere, and they had been locked out of the campus as well. Vice told them not to give up already, as they could still investigate even without entering the school premises. For example, the school's periphery. But Carly said they could barely move a muscle and asked him to call it a day there. Vice said that the dragonfly leather would be theirs before the sun rises, but he questioned if he seriously couldn't be telling them to keep searching all night long. He replied that it was but a given, seeing as they hadn't found it yet, and he was not expecting them all to be that clumsy. If they had all just gone along with his calculations, they would have had it by then. Everyone told him that's too much, as they weren't even able to finish their lunch. Vice said, "Allow me to impart my wisdom to them," and said that those who do not work, neither shall eat. Shibis tried to make him calm down Monson, as he was furious with anger, frustrated from Vice's words, and told them to have their dinner because if they filled their stomachs, good ideas would come to them. But Carly told them they hadn't gathered any food, and there was nothing around. Monson felt that Carly was right, as they were too busy doing Vice's bidding. Then Shibis told everyone that he knew that would happen, so he had prepared something, and that was mushrooms. He told them he went to the forest and collected a couple of edible blue mushrooms. Everyone called it a great job. Vice said that if everyone were as competent as thieves, they would found the dragonfly leather by then. But Monson said to take a short break and rest. Suddenly, everyone's stomach hurt. Even Carly was shocked at what she ate, as it was super bad, and they felt like they were going to die. The others said that they needed to ask the sync test from the other class for help, but Vice stopped them and said that if they did that, they'd become a laughingstock. Monson asked him if that was really the time for that and told him not to be ridiculous. Carly suggested going to the infirmary, but Vice again said that it was even more unthinkable, as if they relied on the infirmary, it would damage their reputation. Carly said that would result in penalties, but the boy said that some compromises have to be made. Vice tried to stop him. A boy shouted at him, "What are you doing?" and asked if they would perish instead. Vice said that a ranked emotion would be inconceivable, and no one went somewhere for help. The next day, all the students of Class 20 were found unconscious in front of the school gate, and they were taken to the infirmary. On the other side, the principal was wondering that he never expected Leopold to establish a base, and his progress record was just 2 days, breaking the record for the fastest development in a pioneering academy. Perhaps that could void his ranked emotion, but he couldn't apply for the special training class record. The vice principal entered his cabin, and the principal said he was late and asked if he had any ideas. He told him that he had a simple solution. Let's prioritize base build-in for the other students as well, rescheduling their plans. If one person could do it, then all of them could do it faster. The principal felt excited and told him that was a good idea. In that case, let's select a project leader from the students and assign them to the task. They thought there was only one candidate for them, and they called the vice into his cabin. The vice entered the cabin and asked if he needed something from him. They asked him how he was feeling. He thanked the nurse that he was completely fine and told him that regarding that matter, it wasn't his fault. The principal replied that he was aware, and instead of discussing that, he had something for him that he wanted him to do, establish a base. The vice said that it was still a long way off. The principal said that with a capable student like him leading, it was possible, and he hereby appointed him as the base committee chairman. The vice man told him that he was welcome to use students from other classes as well. The vice replied that he understood then. Indeed, that role could only be fulfilled by a wise person like himself, and said that in return he had a request. If the base establishment was successful, he wanted to be appointed as the student council president. The principal considered that as a small favor and told them they could easily grant that.